Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big one today. Yep, Ole Miss fans and the entire crew down there, they're getting very angry with Lane Kiffin and all this nonsense.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
They want him to make a decision, and I think they've given him a real deadline. The term ultimatum was used, but I think it was more of a deadline. And it has a lot to do with the Egg Bowl and whether or not he's going to be able to coach the playoffs without signing a contract or the extension. Now, as many of you know, he, speaking of Lane Kiffin, went on Pat McAfee's show. And it was supposed to be an interview. I like the Pat McAfee show, but he's not going to, dig in to a bunch of tough questions. And it turned into a bit of a pep rally, honestly.
Man, we're having a blast. I love it here. I mean, our running back's sitting right over here. Come on over. And it just couldn't be better. Like I said, you pray for things. Our fans prayed for this type of thing, and now we're in the middle of it. So enjoy it. You're 10-1. You're getting ready. You got a bye week. You get to watch half the country lose, and there's no way we can lose Saturday. And then you play the Egg Bowl and go dominate that and keep that Egg Bowl trophy home where it's been for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, it was basically a rah-rah session. And he did ask him about the ultimatum, but he didn't ask it in a very blunt manner. And he said, oh, no, there's been no ultimatum. No. Was there a deadline? Also didn't ask him about the LSU trip, his family going down to Baton Rouge, or the Gainesville trip or any of that. So, again, I think Lane was trying to tamp some things down because it had gotten pretty loud. And I'm going to let you listen to Locked on Ole Miss. Now, this guy, Stephen Willis, he's almost turned into Lane Kiffin on YouTube because everybody wants him as a guest. I've seen him on multiple shows. I mean, everything's about Ole Miss right now. And he's really covered this well. It's one of the things I liked about Locked On. They have real consistency amongst all their anchors, and they put out great content.
Did something that was absolutely unbelievable. I think, personally, this is my opinion, that Lane Kiffin was going to try and have his cake and eat it too, which means he is feeding Keith Carter just enough information to keep Keith happy, lies about what's going on, keeps it quiet, coaches the playoff game. So he gets to have his cake and eat it too. And it makes sense that Lane Kiffin thought he could get away with that because Keith Carter and nobody else has said no to him for the better part of the last 6 years. So, of course, he thought he could get away with it. But Keith Carter, to the surprise of everybody, and I've heard this from multiple different places, Keith Carter put an ultimatum on Lane Kiffin to where he had to sign the extension by a certain time. And the line of that is there's 24 hours each direction on that if you want to go into that. Or he would get fired and would not be allowed to coach in the playoffs. If, for any reason, Lane Kiffin takes a job at Florida or LSU, if he took a job there tomorrow, he would not be allowed to coach in the Egg Bowl. Keith Carter has drawn a line in the sand and said, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, and it sounds like LSU has a very similar offer, around $15 million a year for 6 years, because that's what Jimmy Sexton wanted, and Jimmy gets what Jimmy wants. And I believe Florida had originally offered 13.5. Also, the word on the street, and according to the Ole Miss folks that follow, including Stephen Willis, I think Ole Miss has offered him 13, which would make him basically the highest paid coach in the country. Now, I will tell you, he came out with a video today, as a matter of fact, and the university, I guess, had contacted him. That's how big this has gotten, and said, now, wait a minute, he can still be our coach and all that, which, he's made that clear that, of course, he can still be the coach. And I hope he stays there. I have a lot of empathy for Ole Miss fans for what they've been through, what he put them through with Auburn, and he's always looking to jump jobs. That's just what the guy does. But, of course, he could stay there. And I think putting pressure on him with a deadline, and it's semantics, okay? We're talking ultimatum, deadline. Yeah, he may not have given him an ultimatum, but he may have given him a deadline of, hey, we need to know. Because I don't think you can let that dude coach through the playoffs, and then he goes through that, and then he decides to leave. What coach are you going to get? What about the players? We've got a signing day early in December for athletes to sign for their scholarships. And then on top of that, then you've got the transfer portal, which is in January. They can't allow this to continue on forever. And Lane would allow it to do that because that's, he can't make a decision and he always struggles with it. I mean, he put Auburn through a ton of grief and Ole Miss in 2022 and wrecked their season. They were 8-1 and lost 4 games in a row right after that. This gets in players' heads and it gets in the fan base's head. And I was watching another show. Of course, I'm a huge fan of YouTube anyway, the Ruffino and Joe show. And they've been following this big time because Ruffino is obviously a big LSU guy. But it was very interesting to hear Joe bring up Tennessee and what Lane Kiffin had done to Tennessee back in the day. And, of course, I remember that really well, extremely well. That's why I don't trust Lane.
I don't like how much he is turning this into an absolute complete sideshow. Like, I think that this whole thing is completely built up into a ridiculous, dramatic mess.
Right.
I also personally think that this is not far off from what he's done in the past. The Tennessee situation was a very long time ago, but it feels like it was tried to be emphasized, especially in that documentary that he did with ESPN, that he's a completely different person, that he's matured and he handles situations better. I would argue that this past week has made me completely doubt that he is still the same exact coach that he was and the same person that he was. He is incredibly narcissistic and focused on himself. And I really would implore LSU and Florida fans to be very careful about what you're getting yourself into.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody sees this. Everybody acts like, oh, well, he's doing yoga. He's made all these changes. A leopard doesn't change his spots, okay? Lane is Lane. He's going to do as he pleases. And if you've got to suffer and he's got to torture that fan base a little bit more, that's what he's going to do. Okay, that's just the guy.
Thanks for coming, guys. This was not an easy decision. This is something that happened very quick. A decision that myself and my family made. And we've been here 14 months. The support has been unbelievable here. I really believe that this is probably the only place that I would have left here to go, was to go to Southern Cal.
So I'm glad somebody recognizes that outside of the state of Tennessee. Now we're going to talk about the Gators. Now, granted, LSU is heavily involved in this, but they're not the same as the Gators. As I've told you many times, Florida is Regina George, okay? They are the mean girl in high school, and they like to take what they believe is theirs because they decided it was today. It doesn't matter the past. It doesn't matter. It's what I want right now. It's just the way the Gators are. And they don't consider Ole Miss to be on their level at all, not anywhere close to their level. And this is Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators. I've shown you him multiple times. He covers the Gators really well, but he's a Gator.
I do think that, coaches should take their time. Players should take their time. They had their team meeting, right, that they had to have because it was such a distraction. They had that. What happened is Ole Miss got impatient, and Ole Miss gave an ultimatum to a guy who is widely thought of as a bit of an egomaniac, right? You give an ultimatum to an egomaniac, I would say that I think the least likely option now is Lane staying at Ole Miss. And there is nobody to blame for that other than Ole Miss. Again, I will stand firm and I will stand in the pain here. I feel good about Florida landing Lane Kiffin, but I don't think Lane has officially made a decision yet. I don't think he's told anybody a decision because I don't think it's been made. But I do think that Ole Miss just helped him get closer to making one, not in the way they wanted to. You played stupid games, and now you might win a stupid prize, which makes a lot of sense because if you've seen anything about how the Ole Miss fan base talks and how they tweet and what they say and how they spell, they're stupid. So, yeah, they're going to play stupid games, win stupid prizes because that's what stupid does, right? You can't fix stupid. Remember that.
Yeah, not a high opinion of Ole Miss fans. Which, look, this is sports fandom. It's the way it is. But he wasn't done.
I don't think you're usually the good guy. I'll say that's how I feel about ultimatums, right? Like I don't think giving someone an ultimatum, again, unless it's like a dire situation, I don't think giving someone an ultimatum is like, I don't think that's something that great people do often, right? You gave the ultimatum. Here's the thing. You didn't even get told no. You didn't. You gave an ultimatum that said, hey, speed up your process. And he went, okay, I'm going to send my family places. I'm going to do this. I'm going to speed up my process. And then he sped up the process and you threw a fit. You morons. You grade A idiots. You did it to yourselves. You did it to yourselves. And I hope you hire someone that goes 0-12 for the next 4 years, because you are morons in every sense of the word for that nonsense that you tried to pull and then it didn't go your favor and you want to paint someone else as the bad guy.
There you go. The Florida Gators. Now you understand why I want to beat them so bad down there in the swamp, because they're going to point and laugh at Tennessee if we don't win. And they're having a terrible season. They have had a terrible 4 years with Billy Napier, and I miss Billy already. Losing him has been tragic for me. But he's gone, and they may end up with a good coach. And you think they're bad now? Look, they're won, 3 or 4 games this year. They're terrible, and they're already laughing and pointing at Ole Miss, who is 10-1. And they just got beat by them. That's just the way the Gators do. I've said it many times. They're bad losers, like many of us are, but they're way worse winners. They're the worst winners in college football. There's nothing worse than getting beat by the Gators. It stings, and then they laugh and point and pour salt in the wound. And it doesn't matter. They could be 0-11, but if they beat you, it's like they won the national title. So anyway, wanted to bring this to you. We've got a big game Saturday at night, of course, at the Swamp. It had to be at night. So I'll be talking about that some coming up. But the Gators got to go down. They got to go down this Saturday and lose and get that monkey off our back. And as far as Lane Kiffin is concerned, does he want the $15 million over 6 years, or does he want to coach the playoff? Because Ole Miss is not going to let him coach that playoff team unless he signs the extension. If he doesn't, they're going to move on because they have to. And he's going to be the first guy to walk away from a playoff team. And not only will he be despised in Tennessee like he is, he's going to be despised in Mississippi. He'll have 2 states down on him. I don't know that you want that, Lane. Maybe you might be better off to just stay where you're happy. Yeah, you won't get $15 million. You'll get $13 or $14 million. Oh, woe is me. That's the same. Mississippi's got a lower cost of living than Florida. Florida's not bad, but it's not Mississippi. It's just cheaper to live there. So it'd be about the same amount of money, honestly. But anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, boom, and boom. Hit that little button right there. Help you get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video, YouTube. Thanks, you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay. Those Florida Gators.
Honey, look around you. To everyone here who matters, you're vapor. You're spam. A waste of perfectly good yearbook space. Nothing's gonna change that.